Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the only Huntress character guide you'll ever need. In this video, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know to play Huntress. We'll be going over the general overview, the type of survivor, good and bad items, strengths and weaknesses, and anything else you might need, including how to beat Mithrix. Make sure to subscribe if this is something you want to see more of, because I'm doing one for every survivor in the game. So her primary is simply an arrow. It is an auto-guided one. You don't need to aim anywhere near the enemy, they just need to have that little indicator so that you can shoot them. The secondary is a glaive that bounces off of multiple enemies. The shift is one big teleport. And the special, you go up into the air, pick a radius, and drop down an arrow rain to pelt enemies with arrows. The alternate primary throws 3 arrows at once, and on a crit it shoots 6 arrows. Now she does not have an alternate secondary, but her alternate utility is a triple blink. The difference is this blink cannot go upwards. It is fully back and forth, whereas the other blink can go in any direction. This one charges a lot faster and is not as long. And the alternate special, you jump up into the air and you have 3 railgun shots to shoot at enemies. So this is my preferred loadout, and let me tell you why. The M1 is the base M1. I like the consistency of the shot. I also love the triple blink. Going upwards is not that important to me. It's more the cooldown. Being able to dodge way more is super helpful, rather than dodging once a farther distance. And the special is a no-brainer. Ballista does so much damage when compared to Arrow Rain, it is tough to ever go back. Ballista does 900 damage per shot, while Arrow Rain is 225 damage per second, but there's no big burst damage there. That is all proc based, so Arrow Rain can never proc either band, while Ballista can. I also have included all the proc coefficients on the screen for Huntress's abilities if you guys are curious. Proc coefficients, not to get too technical, but they are the multiplier of on-hit effects. An ATG has a 10% chance to fire, but that is assuming a 1.0 proc coefficient. If an ability has a 0.5 proc coefficient, an ATG actually only has a 5% chance to fire. So as we loot this stage, let me talk about Huntress's strengths and weaknesses. Huntress's weakness is pretty straightforward. She is very squishy. One of the lowest health totals in the entire game, so you have to make sure you're always moving and dealing damage to avoid getting hit. Huntress's strength is just the opposite of that. She is very mobile. Pretty significant damage too, especially when you consider adding Ballista into the mix, but her mobility makes up for the lack of health in terms of just avoiding the damage that would kill you anyway. Huntress is also really good at dealing with crowds of enemies. With one backup mag that gives you an extra use of your M2, dealing with crowds is really simple. Huntress is what is known as a hybrid survivor. Now, if you are using Arrow Rain as your special, she would more qualify as a proc survivor. But since Ballista does such a large chunk of damage, you could make the argument for a burst ability. Meaning, with that ability, Crowbar actually isn't a bad play. Usually Huntress is going to thrive on things like Bleed, Sticky Bomb, ATG, Ukulele, all the percent chance on hit effects, but Crowbar into Band is actually a really good combo if you're using the Ballista M5. I talk about bands a lot because Jaro's band and Ronald's band are 2 of the best green items in the game. I would say they are both within the top 3, and as long as an ability does 400% damage, that can proc bands. That's the other benefit with Huntress. Pretty much any item is going to help, considering the hybrid survivor approach, but depending on what kind of run you get, you can lean one way or the other. Now I can show you the general cooldown loop of Huntress during the teleporter. We are given a Wandering Vagrant. Use your M5 or your special whenever you can. The minute there are multiple enemies, throw your glaive and keep using your primary. Your primary is your biggest source of damage, so you'll use that whenever you can, and the moment your special is off cooldown, use that to get a big damage burst. Glaive to deal with groups, and you continue the pattern. I would also just keep using your shift. You get it about every 2 seconds, so you do not need to worry about wasting it. You get it too frequently to be stingy with your use. You can also use your special to pick off ends of golems or smaller enemies, because the cooldown is about 10 seconds, so you really don't have to worry about wasting it. But Huntress, the whole thing, looping around, always moving, making sure you're just not really getting hurt. The movement also makes things like Wandering Vagrants pretty easy to deal with because you can get away really fast. Of course, you always want to do the normal thing of picking off smaller enemies to deal with, so you don't have to worry about having a billion enemies around, but again, if there are a lot of enemies around, the glaive is going to do what you need it to do. With Huntress, you almost always want to be sprinting and jumping. One of the biggest things that I haven't mentioned yet is almost all of her skills are agile, which means, if you'll notice, while I'm sprinting, I can also shoot. Shooting while sprinting is huge. Very few survivors have this ability, so you should be utilizing it to its fullest extent. Again, Huntress is that mobility survivor. You never want to stand still, meaning bustling fungus is one of the biggest traps you can take on Huntress. Keep in mind too, the dash is an actual teleport, so if an enemy's about to hit you, all you have to do is dash at the last second, and they cannot touch you. The biggest thing with Huntress is do not be stingy about using your special, whether that be Arrow Rain or Ballista. Again, I highly recommend Ballista, but do whatever you find fun. But do not be stingy with it. It returns after 10 seconds, and you can easily stall out your dashes to get away from whatever enemy is coming towards you for those 10 seconds. Another important thing to note, with one enemy, I wouldn't use the secondary at all. You're taking too much time to throw a glaive that does 250 damage when you could just be shooting your primary over and over again. I would use your secondary almost exclusively for when there are multiple enemies around. Otherwise, you're probably just wasting potential damage. Now on Huntress, we have Crowbar, we have Bleed, and Alien Head are all probably good items. Again, we are a mixed survivor. Crowbar gives me really good ballista damage at the start, and Noxious Thorn gives me that bleed buff that we need. Alien Head also just allows for dashes to charge up sooner so you can keep even more mobility going. And so let me just walk you through a stage 2 live so that you guys can see Huntress in action for a full stage. I'll kind of just commentate over it, what I'm doing, but for the most part, I'm dealing with threats as soon as I can. Essentially, with Huntress, you almost never want to let go of your primary. Since you can sprint and use other abilities while shooting your primary, that button should almost always be held down because her range is limited and you want the moment something gets in range for an arrow to fire. I'm also going to print 1 gasoline. I don't even care if there is a scrapper on the stage. 1 gas is absolutely massive with Huntress, as it is with most survivors, but that glaive makes it really easy to deal with waves of enemies, especially if you have a gasoline to kill off any that you didn't quite get. With Huntress's ability to sprint through everything, all sprinting items are also really good. Energy drink, fantastic. Rose Buckler, really solid. Little Disciple, of course, really good. And Weeping Fungus is absolutely immaculate. So Huntress is relatively easy at its core, but sometimes can be difficult to execute. It's always moving sideways to enemies. Usually you don't want to moving forward. I have a bell here. I'm always kind of strafing towards it. You want to stay sprinting. Walking is not going to do what you want it to do because you still get hit. You always want to be pretty much clicking 2 directions at once, forward and sideways. That way you can strafe enemies and it's harder for them to hit you, but you're also sprinting at full speed. Another item you don't necessarily want to avoid, but probably won't be as helpful on Huntress is Roll of Pennies. Any item where taking damage is the way the item works is probably not what you want on a survivor that's so squishy. But right now we have a Scrapper, which is great, so we will get rid of our Bustling Fungus, and honestly everything else here is pretty decent. Attack speed is really helpful. Obviously our Faraday Spurs make incredible movement speed, and you can see, dealing with an enemy like this, how is the beetle ever supposed to touch me if I'm able to sprint around while doing damage? Huntress is made for speed. When you use a movement ability, your movement speed will impact it. You'll see my dash is way longer now because of my movement speed. So especially with the longer dash, keep that in mind because you can end up dashing way too far. And of course, like most utility abilities, fall damage is a problem, but not with this shift. So if you jump from a high height and you dash, you will lose all momentum and not take any fall damage. It's another reason why I like the shorter of the dashes, because on a much lesser cooldown, you can avoid your fall damage and immediately go back into avoiding more attacks. And I'm going to play the rest of the stage with the alt loadout ready to go, but you'll see my movement speed with the other shift is way longer. So if you're not ready for that intense movement, sometimes that can catch you off guard. I will go into a backup mag, one of the very good items on Huntress. There are a lot of times when backup mag isn't that helpful. Engineer, for example, is not super helpful, but Huntress is a great one. You can see right there why Arrow Rain is sometimes not the best, although I think that probably would have happened with Ballista as well. So even the special ability is impacted by that movement speed. And so as much as I said do not be stingy with your abilities, I would be stingy with Huntress's dash. If you're using the longer dash, the cooldown is 6 seconds, which, I'll be honest, with movement feels like an eternity. Another thing to note with the alternate primary, the fire rate, even though it does throw 3 arrows out, they do slightly less damage, and there is a longer cooldown between shots. So all in all, it's about the same amount of total damage. I just like the default one because it feels more satisfying to me. I am going to do the teleporter with this loadout. It's not my preferred one, but it will get the job done, and I will show you that. The problem is Arrow Rain with like a Wandering Vagrant sometimes doesn't do the damage if it's too high. I think it is just including the Wandering Vagrant in here, but Arrow Rain just doesn't have the damage output or the aiming output of the other ability. Ballista makes these guys really easy to hit, but Arrow Rain, you kind of have to use it to focus on these smaller enemies, whereas now I have to use my primary to focus on the Vagrants, which is really never what you want to do. You can also hit an Arrow Rain sideways to try to get a little bit of extra damage, but it's a little bit harder to execute. Another thing I will mention is another fall damage breaker is the M2. It'll stop all your momentum. Same thing with the M5. If you want to Arrow Rain, it will stop your momentum also. So Huntress, all things considered, should be very easy to avoid fall damage with. It is only the primary that will let you take damage. Now, these next couple stages, I probably don't have much for you, so I'll come back in if I find anything interesting. But while I'm gone, remember this one thing. With Huntress, there's only one rule. Ass. Always stay sprinting. Here's another little tech that you can do if you need to go up, jump, look at the ground, and then Ballista. I can get up to the next level. Now we can do a mountain shrined up teleporter with my favorite loadout, with pretty good items if I do say so myself. So essentially you'll just see when I'm using my abilities. There's 2 Imp Overlords, so I am using my glaive whenever I can. We're ballistaing and we're dashing away in a circle. We're always using all of our abilities whenever they're off cooldown. Do not be stingy with your dashes, especially if you are on this dash. You can kind of use them whenever you'd like to. Like right now, there's a lot of wisps, and they will chip me down. Huntress, again, very squishy, so it's very important to deal with those small groups of enemies, more than one Imp Overlord if you need to. Now I can focus on the Imp Overlord now that everything else is down, and I can walk over here and deal with the bigger threats. When using your special, if you're on mouse and keyboard, I'm just going to explain it that way. If you're on controller, it works the same way. I click M5 to jump, and then I can just shoot with M1. You don't need to click M5 to activate the ability every time. I don't know how much common knowledge that is. I didn't know that for a long time. Makes it way easier to shoot it. It is also generally more helpful when using Ballista just to focus on one enemy, throw all 3 bullets out, especially if it's a larger enemy, then sit in the air, hit one, hit the other, and aim for a third. You never really want to be staying still. So even if you waste 2 of your shots after you've already killed a beetle, it's probably safer just to shoot it all and wait for the cooldown. One of the biggest things you'll want to look for with Huntress is a band. If you can find one, it is incredible. But that is pretty much only the case if you're using Ballista. If you're using Arrow Rain, the only thing that can proc a band is the final hit on a glaive, which is fine, but it's not going to give you anywhere near as much damage as a Ballista band would. Now I'm just going to play footage from the teleporter boss without really any narration, so you guys can watch what a true Huntress teleporter looks like with all the abilities moving around. The other beautiful part of Ballista is its infinite range. I can hit an enemy from that far if I want to. So now when that Greater Wisp gets over here inevitably, it only has half its health. One thing that can be really frustrating, and I don't really know a good way to avoid it, is that your own drones will block Ballista. So if you're aiming at something and you go for a drone, it will hit the drone first and not go to the enemy you're targeting. Now I'm going to switch my primary over to Flurry, and then I'm going to give myself the Ocular HUD, which guarantees crits, so that I can show you what I mean by it'll fire 6 shots at once every single time you crit. So the proc potential of Flurry is a lot better than the default of Strafe, but it depends if you're aiming for a proc build or not, because if you're not hitting crits, you are just doing normal 3 shots. Here's an instance where as Huntress you might feel very overwhelmed. I have a ton of brass contraptions in the air, an absolute boatload of wisps, but watch at how good a glaive is at just ending all of these small enemies. I have to do very little work. I hit 2 glaives, hit another glaive, those 2 are gone. See how clear the sky is? We do a ballista on here, and we are looking pretty good in terms of the swarm of enemies. Now I'm gonna try to show off some really interesting tech here that's pretty minimal, all things considered, in your runs. But when you enter into the Mithrix arena, you can stand here for 30 minutes if you want to. Mithrix will never spawn. It's right about here-ish where he will come in. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna sprint over that line. We are gonna hold the ballista after about 3 to 4 seconds after that line. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold it right here. And if I aimed it correctly, the timing, I missed his head. If you aim it correctly, the timing works out really well. The shuriken ended up hitting him, but unfortunately we did not. We'll go through the Mithrix fight here live just so I can kind of show you how it works. Generally, I'm not touching the glaive on the Mithrix fight. I'm staring at him, hitting ballista when I can, and backing up with a dash if need be. He can't really do anything to you while you're holding M1 from this distance. If he gets close, I'm dashing backwards and we're hitting a ballista. He jumps, that's the whole thing. Phase 1 is very simple. Again, if he gets close to you, just make sure you dash to avoid any damage, and we're staying about this distance away. Huntress does not have damage fall off as far as I'm aware, so if we are far away from Mithrix versus really close, the damage doesn't matter other than having a focus crystal. So I want to be at the maximum Huntress range while still being able to hit Mithrix, but staying far enough away where Mithrix cannot damage us. That is the goal, and that's why having multiple dashes is so helpful, because I can continue to dash over and over again if he begins to get close. And so this is pretty much phase 1. With Huntress, it's pretty boring. Whoa, okay. Well, sometimes you don't want to be sprinting against Mithrix because you kind of can only sprint forwards, and you want to mostly be going backwards against Mithrix, at least for the first phase. And you'll get used to Mithrix's distance. Like, I know this distance is not very safe because of that swipe, but you'll get used to that exact distance you need to stay away at some point. Just keep practicing it. Sometimes he will sneak up on you like that and do some pretty insane stuff. Make sure you get a lot of distance after that so he can't do it 2 times in a row. And this should finish up phase 1 in just a moment. We are done. Phase 2 is just like you'd battle any other enemies in the game, trying to target 1. Ballista, you can glaive a couple times if there are enemies nearby, but if it's just 1 enemy, it is more efficient just to use your primary. But here, I'm going to throw out my glaives. The minute they can bounce back and forth between enemies, that will increase my damage. Phase 3 Mithrix is most of the same. We're trying to stay away so he can't come over and just swipe us out of nowhere, but I will often, you'll see me sprint towards and past. Mithrix is always trying to go where you are, and if you slip by him like this and dash, he usually can't make contact. So if you realize you're too close or you're in a weird spot, that is the best way to deal with it. Just dash right at him, and he kind of can't do anything, especially if he hammers. He usually hammers in the direction that he's facing, which means the shockwave is going to go in that direction, so if you're behind him, very infrequently does it hit you. Once Mithrix is up, of course you have to worry about Pizza. Nothing really changes in terms of that. Luckily, that golem is distracted by my drones, so I just have Mithrix to focus on, and Pizza will come in here. Huntress is pretty quick, though I don't recommend shooting at Mithrix here. You can shoot at other enemies while you do it, but whatever you do, make sure you avoid Pizza at all costs. Huntress is very squishy. If a Pizza hits you, that might just be the end of the run. Now I'm just going to let this play while I concentrate fully so I don't have to narrate everything that I do, and you guys can just watch a Mithrix fight live. And you see, it was right here where my heart dropped. We almost lost the run. Luckily, we were able to survive, but I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you guys, join my Discord. It's so rad in there, and you can ask any questions you'd like. I'm pretty active in there, so go check it out. Link in the description. Alright, a little bit spooky there. We got hit by a pizza. Now phase 4 with Ballista or Arrow Rain. This is how you want to play it. Keep your distance. Huntress does not need to be close. We have Ballista and Arrow Rain, which can go very far. So Ballista, I'm just going to be shooting from here and getting a couple items back. Every time he shoots at us, we will dash a couple times, get behind cover, and all we have to do is survive for 10 seconds while we wait for Ballista to come back. Once he's not shooting, take Ballista, bang, 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 and we'll slowly get everything back. Especially if Mithrix doesn't have a lot of movement speed, you can pretty easily stay really far away and avoid almost anything he throws at you. Hopefully he'll latch onto a drone, but again, we Ballista every 10 seconds, get some items back, and as I get items back, I'll get just slightly closer. Right now, I don't feel quite comfortable enough to get within primary range, but this one should be good enough. We'll get our transmitters back, our bottles back, and now I can go in. This is pretty much all I want to do. I can glaive if I want, but I'm just kind of staying in close, waiting until he shoots, and then I can do more damage. We're playing it very carefully. There's no reason to rush on Huntress. You can take your time, and everything should be a-okay. To stay in the air, I might glaive a couple times. That is what glaive can be helpful for, just to stay airborne and not worry about it. But once you're here, you are pretty much done. And Mithrix is all finished. Now, really quickly, I want to go over how to unlock all 3 alternate abilities for Huntress. To unlock Flurry, which is the alternate primary, all you need to do is get the finishing blow on every hit of a glaive, which is 7. The best way to do this early on, or even later in a run, is to wait for 7 wisps to appear and get rid of any other enemy. That way when you throw your glaive, it'll do enough damage to one-hit any wisp. If that doesn't work, add a crowbar or 2 into the mix and you should be good to go. To unlock the triple blank, all you have to do is hold 12 crowbars in your inventory, so either jump on command or just loop a bunch until you find a printer. And to unlock Ballista, you need to finish a teleporter event in Rally Point Delta or Scorched Acres without falling below 100% health. This is just a skill thing, you just need to try not to get hit. But a bonus on how to do this, if you grab Aegis or have any sort of barrier, which is the orange health, that puts you above 100% health. So as long as you have some sort of barrier, you'll never fall below 100. And there you have your Huntress guide. Again, please ask any questions you may have in the comments below. I will answer anything that you have. And give me suggestions on who you want to see next. And with all that being said, thank you all for watching, and I we'll see you all next time.